Καλησπέρα σας, καλοί φίλοι τηλεθεατές. Good evening to you. Welcome to our program. We have with us Mr. Jason Charalambous, a candidate for Islington South and Finsbury. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Vasilis.
It's nice to have you here.
Great pleasure.
I must say the other candidates are for Islington South and Finsbury: Emily Thornbury, Labour; Aline Tesmir, Liberal; Penali Hambache, Green; and Jason Charalambous, Conservative.
That's right.
Okay. Now, before we go to this, I mean, I'm sure our audience wanted to know more about you. I mean, you are a Greek Cypriot, you're born here in London.
Of course.
Cypriot parents. Where your parents came from? Give us a little bit of a background and the history of family.
Sure. Well, so my parents and grandparents came to this country in the 50s and 60s. So my parents were both primary school education age. My mother's family originates from a village in Gerinia called Garmi. And my father's family comes from a small village in Bafos called Arodes in the Agamas Peninsula. They came to England as economic migrants, obviously in search of a better life. And they settled, my father's family settled in Finsbury Park, and my mother's in Tufnell Park. And their parents went to work straight away from their respective trades in Cyprus. So my father's father continued working as a blacksmith in London, my mother's father as a barber and a builder, and my grandmothers were machinists and seamstresses. And when my father he wanted to go to university, but as he told me recently, he couldn't even afford the bus pass to go to college. So that's an indication of how the very difficult circumstance they found themselves in. So when he left college, he went to work. He wanted to work in the rag trade, in the clothing business. So he got some experience on a market stall. He worked with other Cypriots that were in the business in London. And by his early 20s, he managed to open up his own factory in Finsbury Park, manufacturing clothes. And my mother, in the meantime, went to the London College of Fashion, was a fashion designer in the West End, which is how they met. Because my father was going to her designer to get the designs done. And then they had the factory for some years, and then they opened a couple of shops in Islington and Finsbury Park, and in Angel, clothes shops. Yep. I mean, they worked 7 days a week before I was born, and when I was younger, I remember spending my weekends working with my parents in their shop. When I was a teenager, and at primary school age, so very fond memories.
Do you have any other brothers, sisters? Or?
Yep, I have one brother and one sister.
Are they in politics as well?
No, I don't come from a political family, and I'm the first person, I think, in my family to pursue this career.
I mean, okay, tell me about your studies first, and then we go to how you decided to get into politics.
Sure. Well, I went to King's College London to study law, and from there I qualified as a barrister at the Middle Temple. I then chose to cross-qualify as a solicitor, and now I'm a solicitor advocate, which is a solicitor who has the rights of audience to speak in court. And on top of that, I'm a London Borough Councillor in Enfield. So I've been a councillor in Enfield since 2014, which is thoroughly enjoyable. I'm also a governor at my primary school, which is very, very important to me to be a school governor, particularly at a school that gave me so much. To be able to give something back is very rewarding. And a number of other things I'm involved in, including charities and otherwise, but I'm happy to tell you more about that if you like.
Yes, definitely. Okay, politics. In which way they came into your life? I mean, how?
It's a good question. I think from a young age, from teenage years onwards, I was intrigued and interested by politics and current affairs, so I was following affairs closely. But I didn't really get involved until after university. Strangely, I think, when I think about it, I think the seed was planted when I was at primary school, because I remember however old I was, 7 or 8 years old, and the local MP, Michael Portillo, in Enfield Southgate, he came and spoke to to me at Assembly, to all of us in Assembly. And I can't really remember what he said, but I just remember leaving that Assembly and thinking, I've never seen anyone like that before. This man seems serious, inspiring. And it planted a certain seed. I think the following year, actually, Stephen Twigg, who won the 97 election for the area, he took us on a tour of the House of Commons, my class. And I thought I was fascinated by the House of Commons and Parliament. And I was very proud of myself because I was the only, when we were asked by a teacher to identify a statue, I was the only person to identify Winston Churchill. God knows how I knew the answer to that, but it suddenly it left me with a sense of, wow, I mean, how did I know that? And I think, so to say that the seed was planted perhaps early on, but it's something that I've sort of thought about a lot. And after I finished my studies at university, I started getting more involved in politics in many ways, and on top of obviously my day job, spending time as a volunteer helping candidates and otherwise in elections and so on. And it's something that's grown progressively over the years.
Okay, why conservative? I mean, why are you standing for conservatives? For Theresa May. Is that any particular reason? Or?
Well, yes. Well, firstly, I love this country and I believe the Conservatives are the best people to govern it. And I say that because you look at my value set, my belief set, what is ingrained in me from ever since I was a child, I think are most aligned with the Conservative Party. And I say it in a number of senses. I think that growing up and seeing my family work extremely hard, and knowing how the Conservative Party is a party that rewards hard work best. I believe the Conservative Party is the workers' party. It's a party that wants to see people get back to work, wants to help people and reward people for the fruits of their labour. And I think that is an extremely important tenet of Conservative thought. But beyond that, I think, I'm not very religious, but I certainly have faith. And I think that actually, when it comes to family values, which, if you like, which I obviously grew up in very fortunate to grow up in a happy home, and I look at the sort of political parties, and I feel that when it comes to traditional family values, the Conservative Party is supportive, and I think that. Obviously, I think from an economic perspective that nothing in life in politics in the country can be achieved if the economy is not strong. If we don't have a strong economy, you can't fund the public services we need. We can't get people in employment, and if you don't have people working, not only does the economy not grow, but those individuals don't have the self-worth that hard work brings with it. And when I look at the economy, I see that you don't have to look very far through history to see that the Conservatives tend to do a much better job in boosting the economy in this country than other parties. And in Islington alone, since 2010, when the Conservatives took office, 20,000 more people are in work. And that's an amazing achievement. And I look at the general, you think of how when Labour left office in 2010, the famous note in the Treasury that there's no money left. And I mean, that's a pattern actually in this country's history that unfortunately Labour governments do end up spending more than they should, which actually leaves our economy in a very dangerous and precarious state. And when the Conservatives comes along, they pick up the pieces and they rebuild it, get more people back into work, and make sure our public services get the funding they deserve.
Mm-hmm. During your campaign, it's only a few days left.
Yes.
I suppose you met quite a few people on this.
Yes.
You identify some main problems. What problems you came across to, and what are you going to do to change?
Yes,
make things better.
Thank you. Islington's an amazing place, a wonderful place for people to live, to work, to go out. But it does face some real problems. And crime, for example, at the moment you're seeing a spate of snatch crime, which is people on mopeds snatching people's mobile phones and other possessions. Islington suffers from a disproportionate high number of people who suffer from mental health issues as well. And it's also there's a lot of pressure on housing there. There's not enough housing for people who want to live there, who need to live there, people who work in our schools and hospitals, and more affordable housing is needed in Islington. And these are just three issues, but there are so many other issues that need to be addressed in Islington. And I think that for me personally, I have a track record of campaigning as a councillor in other fields, and actually achieving things. And I think that Islington deserves a Member of Parliament who will be a loud and strong voice for the people of Islington in Parliament and in whatever platforms available, because there are many things that need to be addressed, and from day one, that's what I will be fighting to do.
Okay, now, I mean, you are Greek Cypriot, and you meeting quite a few, Cypriots during your campaign. I'm sure about that. What can you do to make sure that the community has a better life among the others? What can you promise to them?
Well, I think, firstly, I'm very proud of my Cypriot heritage, but I consider myself British, and I think that's an important, distinction in the sense that I'm very proud of being British and English, but I'm very proud of my past, my heritage, my family roots, and so on. I think that's the same with many of the Cypriots that we have in London. They have that same sort of sense of emotion. And for me, I have a track record when it comes to supporting the Cypriot community. As chairman of the Conservative Friends of Cyprus, one of the first things I did was to get the Foreign Secretary at the time, Philip Hammond, to speak to the community. And that was the first time in decades that a sitting Foreign Secretary addressed the Cypriot community. And it was an amazing event. Philip Hammond is a phenomenal person who knew exactly what he was talking about. He's done a lot of great things to support British-Cyprus relations. And I've done many other events with Boris Johnson as Foreign Secretary, and so on. But I've also led parliamentary delegations to Cyprus. I've led two now, where I've taken a considerable number of MPs to Cyprus to help them get to know the island better. And this is a volunteer-run organisation. We don't receive any funding from anybody. We all act as volunteers with the purpose of helping the Conservative Party and Conservative politicians better understand Cyprus and the Cypriot community, to foster a better climate of relationships. And I think we're very lucky, actually, that British-Cyprus relations are very strong, and they have been since David Cameron took office. We went through a bit of a bad patch, I think, under the Labour government of Tony Blair and Jack Straw. And that's very important, because Cyprus is a historic ally with deep historic and cultural ties with Britain. And let's not forget there's 50,000 Brits that live on the island as well. It's very important that the relationship remains strong, particularly post-Brexit. And for me, actually, it goes beyond that I think, the Cypriot community is a community of 300,000 strong in Britain, now fourth, fifth generation, being here for the best part of a century. And I think it's quite a shame that we don't have, we've never had a parliamentarian. There's never been a parliamentarian of Cypriot descent, as far as I know, in the House of Commons. And I think that needs to change, because I think that having somebody of a Cypriot background in politics will help inspire others in the community to take a more active role, I think, in public life, which I think is important, because the Cypriot community has done extraordinary things in so many fields, in business, in science, in so many fields. And I think getting more Cypriots involved in Parliament will ensure that the community is better represented. But of course, my job as an MP will not be just to serve the Cypriot community. Of course, it will be to serve my constituents and the country as a whole. And so my view is actually that from the community's perspective, having one of their own, if you like, in Parliament is more of a role model a factor, whereby, like I say, I would hope to be able to inspire others to take an active interest in, not to become MPs or if they want, but also just take a more active interest in public life more generally. And we do have many councillors who are Cypriots and many school governors and many people in public life. But I think, for a community of 300,000 strong, it deserves a voice.
Yes. Okay. What made you believe that? You're taking on a very strong, candidate, Emily Thornbury. Thornbury. She's very, strong. And what made you believe that you're going to change things? You're going to win?
Well, I don't believe she's necessarily very strong, but what I'll say is this, that I wanted to stay in Islington for a number of reasons. Firstly, because that's where my family story in this country began. That is where my parents settled, that is where they started their business. But it goes further than that, the fact that I've worked in Islington as a lawyer for the last 6 years, a solicitor. I've been fundraising for the disabled children's charity Kids on Islington Green for the past 7 years. I feel I have, and I do have, very close ties with Islington. And it would be a great honour to serve the people of Islington if elected on the 8th of June. And I'm delighted to be standing against someone like Emily Thornberry. I mean, frankly, Islington deserves better representation. It deserves an MP who is actively campaigning for issues that matter to local people and actively representing their constituents in Islington better. And I believe I can do that if the people of Islington put their trust in me, of course.
Mm-hmm. There is a big problem with Brexit, you know. We have 3 categories of Greeks and Greek Cypriots. The first category is those who are here for a long time and they have the British citizen. The other ones is the ones that they have permission to stay.
Yes.
And the ones they just came the last few years, and they are Europeans.
Yes.
They're allowed to stay and work here at the moment.
Yes.
But with Brexit, that is going to be a big problem. What can you say about that? I mean,
Well, not necessarily. I mean, what we need is we need to secure a successful Brexit deal. And that's why, and I firmly believe Theresa May is the best person to secure the best Brexit deal for Britain. And when it comes to, obviously, the majority of the Cypriot community are British nationals in Britain. There are, as you say, some Cypriots who are here, and of course, from many other EU countries who are not nationals, but were living or working in Britain. And I do believe that they should have the right to remain in this country. However, it doesn't go one way. We have to first and foremost guarantee the rights of British people who are living in Europe.
Okay.
There are 50,000 Brits in Cyprus. There are hundreds of thousands of Brits across the continent, across the European Union, that deserve also that security, that sense that they're entitled, that they're allowed to stay there and live out their lives without disturbance. But I am very hopeful that a deal will be struck. Of course, we don't know that. At this stage, it's all going to be subject to negotiations. But I'm hopeful, and I believe the fact is that Theresa May is the only person who I think is credible and capable to make a success of the Brexit negotiation. When we're faced against 27 EU countries and Britain is on its own, I think we need someone strong, formidable, to bat for Britain and win. And I believe Theresa May is the only person who is able to do that.
Mm-hmm. What are your highest achievements in your life? I mean, you're only 31. Okay, what are your highest achievements, and what made you feel proud of yourself?
Well, I'm very proud to be standing in Islington, of course, but
okay.
One thing I'm pleased that I've achieved is that I'm currently chairing a charitable trust called the Trent Park Museum Trust. So in 2014, I started campaigning to save a historic house in Cockfosters in Enfield, in Trent Park. A house which had an extraordinary pre-war history, extraordinary wartime history that was totally secret until files were declassified not so long ago. This site basically helped win the World War II. It played a hugely important role in intelligence gathering and collecting in World War II. And it's also got a fascinating pre-war history. And this house was in disrepair, and it was about to be sold to a developer, and I started a campaign which got great traction with the media, a lot of high-level support as well, public support, 10,000 signatures on a petition. Del Boy, David Jason, even endorsed our campaign. And after 3 years of fighting to save this house, we've now struck a deal with the owners, property developers, who want to develop it for housing. We've now struck a deal whereby 1,000 square meters, the ground floor and the basement of this historic, hugely important site, will form part of a national museum that we are now working towards. We're now embarking on our fundraising to ensure this can become a reality in a few years' time. So I'm very pleased to have worked on that, and with a fantastic team as well, including the chief executive of Bletchley Park and Helen Fry, a great historian, and a number of others. And I'm really pleased that together we've managed to fight for something of great importance to local people and for our country as a whole. And when we pull it off, I think this will be a great asset, not just to Enfield, but to London, to our country. And I'm really pleased we've got this far. Obviously, there are many hurdles to cross, but I'm hopeful and optimistic that we will be cutting the ribbon in a few years' time, and the public will be able to come, and school children will be able to come and learn about its history, which is extremely important. So I'm pleased with that, yes.
Good. So, if you elected now, what your values are and beliefs, and what you can do to make to meet your promises?
Well, For me, I think the first job of a Member of Parliament is to always act in the national interest. Particularly, the first job of government is to keep its citizens safe. And I will certainly always act in the national interest when it comes to securing making sure our people, British people, are safe wherever they reside in the world, and our economy is strong, first and foremost. But also, I would hope to be a champion for the people of Islington if they elect me as their MP, because, like I said, I think they deserve better representation. I think I can offer that. I believe I can. And I will certainly be bringing their concerns to government in a constructive way, working closely with government to ensure that Islington gets a great deal. And I'm optimistic that I will be able to offer the people of Islington the representation that they deserve.
Okay, I'm sure you're going to remember Cyprus when if you elected. What can you do, and what are your plans? I mean, about the Cyprus situation.
Well, I think the fact that the Cyprus problem is still unsolved after all these decades is a great stain on history, and obviously there are many hurdles that must be overcome before the Cyprus problem can be solved. And I believe that the British government has been to date extremely supportive in recent years of the talks process. But I do believe that the issue must remain on the table of government, as it does. And I think one particular issue for me is the issue of refugees. I mean, the fact that you have 200,000 refugees who still have no right to go back to their homes, I think, is a great tragedy. And in light of the refugee problem across the world, when you look at Syria and so many other countries where there are refugees who are displaced, it's a great tragedy, this. And I will be an advocate for the rights of all refugees, Cypriots and Syrians and whoever that you are, wherever you are, to ensure you have the right to return home. And of course, that sounds very idealistic, but I think only when people fight for something can you achieve anything. And one of the quotes that's always inspired me is Winston Churchill, who said, "Politics is the art of the possible." And I think only with determination and tenacity can issues that one believes in be campaigned for and achieved. Mm-hmm. And when it comes to Cyprus, I'll certainly be working very hard for the right of refugees to return home.
Okay. Now, because, I want you to tell our audience why they have to vote for you. With only a few words. Why do they have to vote for you and not for somebody else?
Well, I think my message is this, that for the people of Islington South and Finsbury, when you get to that ballot paper and you're about to put a cross by someone's name, I think the simplest thing to remember is that I'm Jason and I'm here to help. That I will be, if elected, at your dedicated service, championing the issues that matter to you, whether you live in Islington, whether you work in Islington, whether you run a business in Islington. I believe that you deserve better representation, and I pledge and I commit to offering you that better representation and fighting for you every single day for a better deal for Islington's people.
Mm-hmm. Okay, before we go, you have an event this Sunday, is it?
Yes.
Okay, tell us about that event.
On Sunday I have a small fundraising event because, as you know, elections unfortunately do cost quite a bit of money to run, and we don't receive support. We essentially, as a candidate and as an association, we have to fund our own campaign, and so on Sunday evening I'll be hosting a small fundraising reception where I hope I can see many people attend and hopefully raise enough money to cover the costs of the campaign, which are quite substantial, unfortunately. But that's just unfortunately the way the world works. So,
okay, Jason, thank you very much.
Thank you
for being with us tonight. And what else can I say? I wish you all the best.
Thank you very much.
Let's hope we're going to have the first MP, Cypriot MP.
Cypriot descent, yes. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Vasilis. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Have a good night.
Good night.
Thank you very much for being with us. Good night to you.